Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Around the Bases with Bubba and Mo, episode 37, the first episode after the World Series, technically, since we did the recap the last time, the first real episode after the postseason. You can find us on Twitter at Around Bases Pod. You can find myself on Twitter at BDintric. And my co-host, as always, Mo. You can find him on Twitter at Boston_Mo. Mo, how we doing?
We're doing well, Bubba. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Just like you were just saying before we recorded, a lot more already happening than most would think only a few days after the World Series is completed. So going to be a wild off season already. But on a somber note, I wanted to get it out of the way before we get into all those moves. About 2-3 hours ago before recording, Roy Halladay crashed his plane and passed away. So a guy that we grew up watching baseball, which, you know, for us is kind of new in the grand scheme of things outside of like Jose Fernandez and stuff, has died. He retired in 2013, would have been up for a potential Hall of Fame berth this year in 2018, I believe. So if not the following year for sure. But one of the best we saw, grinder. I saw a stat, five seasons of 200 or more strikeouts, 40 or fewer walks. No other pitcher has more than 3 seasons doing that. The list goes on and on for what he's done. He's 2-time Cy Young Award winner, so on and so forth. No-hitter in the playoffs. Don't want to spend all day on Roy, but I want to at least mention something. Did you have anything you'd like to mention on Roy Halladay?
Yeah, well, first off, it's just a terrible tragedy. I mean, I guess the guy enjoyed flying a lot. He had just bought this, I guess it's a two-seater for a really small plane off the Gulf Coast of Florida. And I think everyone in the game, you know, not a lot of people like everybody. I mean, there's always something you might dislike about him. But I don't think I've heard one bad thing said about Roy Halladay. And it's just it's a really, really, you know, terrible thing. And I know people on Twitter say like, well, you didn't know the guy, but it still sucks. I mean, you know, if you were a fan of his and you're a fan of baseball and you watched him, I mean, that was really the last guy that complete games aren't a thing anymore. If you have 1 or 2 in a year, it was, you know, it's a huge accomplishment for you. I mean, that guy from, you know, 2007, it was probably his worst year out of all of them. In that sort of 2005 to 2011 frame, and he had 7 that year, and then he went 9-9-9-8. So I mean, the guy was ridiculous. You know, just going off, and again, not everyone loves the WAR stat, but going off of the Fangraphs WAR, I mean, from 2002 to 2012, he led the league with a 61.3 WAR in terms of starting pitching. The next best was CC with 54.2, and then Roy Oswalt with 47.4. So the guy was dominant at the end of the steroid era and then into sort of that next wave of, you know, the testing for steroids and whatnot. I think we all know people were still kind of taking it at that time. But yeah, just a terrible thing. The guy was going to be a Hall of Famer anyway. They may push it quicker now that he's unfortunately passed away, but you know, definitely Hall of Famer, you know, right away.
Yeah, you said it best. One of those guys that everyone rooted for. As long as you loved baseball, you loved Roy Halladay. And it's like, you know, we have appointment TV. You want to watch Kershaw, Scherzer, Kluber, those kind of guys these days. Well, this was Halladay early in the 2010 and even in the 2000s. This guy was just a monster. And reading some of the stuff players are tweeting out today, it'll let you know how big of an impact he had on the game of baseball. And he was so quiet and just got it done. It was good to see. But yeah, big loss for the baseball community and the Philadelphia Phillies and everyone else. Let's get into some more positive things, and we'll go right into your backyard. Mentioned on the last pod, there were some managerial changes, roster changes, and whatnot. We're going to do it all on this episode to catch up the best we can. And we'll kick it off with a guy that was styling and profiling, walking around Fenway on the cold streets of Boston yesterday like it was a goddamn GQ freaking interview. Alex Cora, the new manager of the Boston Red Sox. Mo, you have to be excited about this.
Yeah, I'm very excited. You know, the guy, he's analytical, and he even said it yesterday when they kind of asked the question. It's not all about analytics. Like, you want to adjust and you want to make the right decision. The numbers are there to help, but at the same time, you got to have a gut. And he told the story about, not that AJ Hinch is going to take out Charlie Morton in Game 7, but he's like, we had Keuchel in the bullpen, we had Verlander in the bullpen, and Hinch kind of thought about it, and of course said, "What are you talking about? He's dealing right now." And you got to keep him in. So there is obviously, a human element to managing baseball. The one thing I took away from yesterday was, number one, this was not Dave Dombrowski's choice. Clearly, Dave Dombrowski said it himself. He said that John Henry and Tom Werner, who the owners of the Red Sox, were in New York for other business things, and they met with Alex Cora when they were playing the Yankees in the ALCS. So that was their guy because they are big into analytics, whereas the Red Sox office is old school. Dave Dombrowski, Frank Wren, and now Tony Russo, which is, I guess, good because he can help Alex Cora, but at the same time, dumb because he's old school. You really need to move forward, and I think that's going to be the talking point for most of these managers that we're going to talk about today that were hired. They're analytical guys, and they've come up that way, and they've moved that way. So I don't think it was Dombrowski's choice, which kind of is funny to me. The good thing is, he hired Ron Renicky, who's Milwaukee manager, most wins in one season in Milwaukee history, and had the playoffs. He's been with Mike Socha for years as the Angels guy, and a lot of folks in LA, from what I've been reading, say that he's the best. I mean, he's going to help everybody out, not only Alex Cora, but the young guys and the entire team. Is a good communicator. I won't go into everyone else. They haven't hired a hitting or a pitching coach yet, which is something to monitor to see who they really are going to go after, because I think it's, the offense has been the worst it's been. Granted, first year without OTs. And then the pitching, the pitching's pitching. That's probably our strength right now. So that's one thing. The last thing that I took from this is he said, I don't really have a lot of pressure in Boston here. I know what Boston is, but there's no pressure. I know how to handle Boston. Alex, I know you were here. You won a World Series here. You don't. You're gonna get this. You're not answering from 4 questions from 4 different guys in Houston. You're answering every different question from 25 different media members in Boston. So he needs to. He was a little bit cocky, like you said, styling, profiling, walking around. Right over the bridge, over the Pike, the Mass Pike. For all you don't know, right to the cask and flag and game on, right to Fenway. So it's a learning curve, and he was a little bit too cocky for me. I love the hire. I think it's a good hire for the team. He's going to communicate with the young guys. The first minority manager in Red Sox history, which for some reason I didn't know about. So that's a great thing to communicate with all the young guys. But I think he needs to calm down a little bit. But like I said, good hire.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I want to see how he gets along. He seems like a real player's guy. So we know how that's been good and bad at times in Boston. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out in the end.
Yeah, you mentioned that with talking Pedroia, because I've obviously played with Pedroia, and that's pretty much it. So we'll see how that goes. But, Pedroia, who knows when he comes back next year, if at all. So that'll be something to talk about when we do talk about the Red Sox on the road. Let's move to our rival from about 3.5 hours down south, up 95. It's the New York Yankees. They let go of Joe Girardi. And Cashman came out and kind of said that he is really the communication with the players. He's having a lot of trouble with that, and that's what they had to do. What'd you think of that? And then who's the fit here? Because it looks like he let him go, but didn't have anyone ready to hire.
Yeah, it's a weird one because been with the team for 10 years, pretty much winning for the most part. This year, as many would say, he was ahead of schedule with this club. 6 playoff bursts. He won a World Series. Honestly, I've clowned on Girardi so many times, but at the same time, I respect what he's done with his team. He's not nearly as bad a manager as I think some other guys are in baseball. So I was quite surprised by the move. I really didn't see this one coming, not yet. It's almost like if you wanted a new manager for the younger regime, why didn't you start someone new this year? Why did you let Girardi go through this year? It seemed very, very odd. It didn't seem like there was issues all year, like you said with Boston. Same with New York. There's tons of media. Somebody would have picked up on issues between players and manager by somebody. Even if it wasn't even true, they would have ran with something that looked like it was bad. It would have happened. So I'm shocked by it. The presser with Cashman was very interesting, saying like a bunch of players texted Cashman like happy they made the move, and then Girardi saying I don't understand it. I had no problem with these guys. It was weird. Now, the next fit. That's a great question because according to Baseball Reference right now, the Yankees is the only opening left as all these managers got hired real quick. So the Yankees is the only spot left. So it's really interesting to see who they come. I know like the joke is, hire A-Rod. Yeah, that's not happening, people. Not happening. I think if you want to just keep it in the Yankee family like people like to do, it'd be interesting if, they somehow lure Don Mattingly away from the Marlins. If Marlins make some kind of deal, they could make some rebuilding BS in there somewhere. But Jeter might have his guy too, so that's tough. It's interesting, like Bernie Williams, but his experience isn't there. I think they'll stay within the team, maybe in the system in AAA or AA, because I don't really see anyone that stands out that's ready to go there, but maybe I'm missing something. What do you think?
So here are the names. I'm just going to rattle off some names that I've seen with odds and different articles and whatnot. And we'll just take it from there. Brad Ausmus, Jerry Harrison Jr., Jason Giambi, Aaron Boone, Jay Bell, Raul Ibanez, Dusty Baker, and Don Mattingly. Now, a lot of people have been kind of grooming and talking about Jason Giambi, maybe taking over the Indians when Tito's done eventually, whenever that is, 10 years, whatever it is, and he'll take his time. I don't know about that. But a lot of people have been there's a lot of rumblings about Jason Giambi, how he's going to be a pretty good manager down the road, which is very interesting to think because, I don't know, maybe it's an A-Rod thing where the guy just loves the game so much and maybe he's all of a sudden gotten into analytics like Gabe Kapler and other guys. But I just think it is bananas that they allowed Joe Girardi to leave and didn't have anyone ready to hire. It is bananas to me, especially where you're probably gonna pass the Red Sox. You really are. Should. If you don't, something went wrong. Whether Severino got hurt or something went wrong that you didn't pass the Red Sox, it would be crazy. They should win multiple AL East titles. They really should. Maybe it'll take a year because the Red Sox still have firepower, and we'll see what happens this coming year. It's a big one. But I just think it's crazy that I think Brian Cashman has really, really screwed this one up. I think he overthought it a little bit. I think he's a little bit fibbing about the whole players texting and whatnot. It's kind of a smear campaign going down, and I just don't like it for New York. Yankees fans should be really mad no matter what they think about Joe Girardi. They really should right now at the front office.
Yeah, it like I said, it came out of nowhere in my mind. It was really surprising. And the names you mentioned, honestly, I don't want Ausmus near that team. I don't want Dusty Baker near that team. I heard Jerry Harrison the other day, and the other names on that list really don't have much experience. Do you want a very inexperienced guy coming into the Bronx to coach, like you said, a team that people forget we're one game away from going to the World Series, and they're ahead of schedule? This team is very, very, very talented. It's pretty wild.
I guess Ibanez would sort of make sense. He's played there.
I would like
he almost got the Rays job, but over Kevin Cash. But I guess what I read about it is he's got whatever job he has with the Dodgers he loves, and his family's there and everything. So I don't think he's ready to move across the country and leave his family. I think he enjoys his job with the Dodgers, and it's not managing a baseball team is a grind. I mean, that's 7 months, whatever it is, on the road almost, unless your family lives with you. So I think that's the one that makes sense. I guess Jay Bell has been he managed the AA team maybe this year for the Yankees, and he's been around in different minor leagues, so maybe it's his chance. But yeah, I don't know how to handicap this one. I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. Let's go to Queens in New York. The Mets got their guy, Mickey Callaway, coming over. He was an assistant on the bench for Francona at the Indians. He's had some other, assistant jobs throughout baseball. Kind of a pretty boy. They're going to like him over there. He might blend in with the starting rotation a bit. But other than that, what's your thoughts on Callaway getting the Mets job?
Yeah, one of the youngest managers, 42 years old for the next year. I think it's a good hire by the Mets. They went with a younger guy, an analytical guy, and a pitching coach who has led this Indians team to be one of the best pitching staffs, bullpen, starting rotation, whatever. I mean, just think of what they did in 2016 in the playoffs when they really only had Kluber and they didn't have Salazar. They didn't have Carrasco. He had to put that together real quickly to put that rotation together real quickly in the playoffs to get them all the way to the World Series. I mean, that was a huge feat. I mean, I know he's just the pitching coach and Francona makes the decisions ultimately during the games, but to get those guys prepared for those games, I mean, that's a big thing, and he's done a great job. And that's what the Mets need is they need a pitching guy, analytical guy that can kind of work with the pitchers and really change the culture in New York with the injuries, number one, and just the ineffectiveness of maybe they've got 1 year Matt Harvey. He can somewhat fix him, make him a serviceable number 4 starter. I don't know, but I like the hire by them. I think Tito's given him some high praise, and a lot of other people have. So I like the hire for the Mets. I think especially the first year without Ray Ramirez. Let's see what happens there. But yeah, I like the hire a lot, and I think he definitely deserved this opportunity because he's worked his way up from the lower minors all the way up to pitching coach for almost a World Series winner, all the way to Game 7. But I like the hire a lot.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting. A lot of work to do.
Yeah, a lot of work. Not a lot of work with this team. And let's stay in the division with the Washington Nationals hiring Davey Martinez. I mean, the guy's been Joe Maddon's right-hand man, I feel like, for the last 20 years or something like that. Since he's been with the Rays, it feels like 20 years. Because I feel like every time I'd watch the Rays, he'd be right next to him, obviously, as the bench coach. And now the last few years at the Cubs, he's finally getting his shot. What do you think of the move for the Nationals?
First off, I can't believe Martinez is 53 years old. I remember watching this guy when I was little, and there's no way, even looking at him, I don't think he's 53 years old, but that's another story for another day. I think it's a really, really good hire. It's a young guy that, as much as people want to give Joe Maddon beef about what he's done this past year, which is very questionable, overall, Maddon's been a pretty darn good manager. And even if he wasn't a good manager, Martinez got to sit next to him for 4 years while the Cubs and Rays and everybody else that he was a part of, they made their runs. He got to go to the World Series and win a World Series. He got the big playoff games that didn't work out as well this year. The experience is there. They said he applied to be the manager after Davey Johnson with the Nationals in 2013. His resume wasn't good enough, so they gave it to Matt Williams. We know how well that worked out. So I think it's a good hire, not bad at all. We've said it a million times. They need to win now. So I think it's a good hire because if Davey's not a good manager, well, the team's going to unload anyways. You can start from scratch. And even if you start from scratch, I think he'd be really good with young kids and a younger team. I think it's a good hire all around.
Yep, completely agree there.
All right, the Detroit Tigers, who still have some veteran money they have to get off their payroll, and it's not going to be easy. They got rid of Brett Ausmus, thank God, and hired Ron Gardenhire, former Twins manager, was an assistant with the D-backs the last couple of years. Good, gritty, old veteran manager, Gardenhire. What are your thoughts on that hire?
Well, you said you can't believe Davey Martinez is 53. I can't believe Ron Gardenhire is only 60. I thought the guy was close to 70 when Torey Lovello hired him, and I thought it was a great hire for Lovello and for his first year to have a guy like that who's managed many, many years, and especially with playoff experience. I thought that was a great hire, and he unfortunately had cancer in the spring and was able to beat that, so that's a great thing, and it means he's probably going to be healthy if he's taking this job, which is awesome for everyone involved. It's a very interesting hire because when he was the Twins manager, although they won a ton, the 40-man end of the year rank was still always in the 20s outside of 2010 and 2011 when they really were going for it. 2010, he was the manager of the year, but they always were still not a rebuilding organization, but maybe retooling is the word. And so he's used to working with young players all the time. And I think that's a big thing for the Tigers, because we all know this is going to be a few years, especially where they still have, Zimmerman's money. They're going to have Miggy's money forever. I mean, they just are. I mean, that contract is not going to get any better. So they're going to have that money that they just can't get rid of it. They're just going to have to rebuild while having that money on the books. And, he's going to have to be patient, because they're going to probably, unless the Royals do something, the White Sox are going to pass them quick, obviously. Those three will be battling for the basement for the next year, and then the White Sox, maybe the year after, will move up. But it's going to be a rough go of it for Gardenhire, but I think he knows what he's getting into. Miguel Avila, I've heard it said both ways, but the president and GM, I think he's kind of prepared him for what's going to happen. So it's good for Ron to be back in because he was a good manager. He was with the Twins forever, and he deserved another shot, obviously, more than a couple other guys. So I'm glad he got it over a guy like we talked about all the time, McClendon. I'm glad he got the opportunity before a guy like that, because he did deserve a second go.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
All right, to the last one. And this one is an interesting one. A lot of things that I didn't know about. I mean, I knew about Gabe Kapler. He's a Red Sox guy, he's an analytical guy, loves working out. But I didn't know about some other things. And the Phillies hired him. And there's been some backlash, and there's been some things said. And it's been kind of a 50-50 with some people like it, some people don't. What did you think about the Gabe Kapler hire for the Philadelphia Phillies?
Well, after I get my 2 cents, I'm curious to what things surprised you. But I was surprised, yes. I've always pictured Gabe Kapler as that kind of high-energy, quote-unquote, guy that just wanted to run all over the place, get dirty, good hard-nosed baseball player, but never really that guy that was going to lead a team. I know in the last 3 years he was head of player development, doing all the analytics for the Dodgers, and that there's a lot to be said about that, for the fact that we've seen them develop some very talented youngsters. So, you take that with that angle, and that's a good angle coming into the Phillies team, who we love. We've talked about a ton, and they are extremely young and extremely talented. So this could be a good approach. You bring a 42-year-old into a team with a bunch of young 20s. They might even have some teens in the minors that'll be it before you know it, and help them get going. They looked better than we expected this year. Still not great by any means. It was just surprising to me, because I never really pictured Gabe Kapler as that guy to be leading a team. He just seemed like kind of more the go get 'em Tiger, type guy than the I'm going to go grind it out. But I've been wrong before, and I hope it works out so all our Phillies love doesn't go to waste. But it was interesting. What was your 2 cents on this?
I think the thing that, like I said, huge in analytics, fitness, nutrition, mental health. So that'll be an interesting thing to see how some of the Phillies take to that, whether he goes through the whole organization or just the team. One thing I read was it's Kapler's way or the highway. So if he has a thought about something, whether it's fitness or whatever he likes in analytics, this defensive shift, something, he would really, when he talks about it, it's really telling somebody and not having a discussion about it, maybe taking someone else's opinion on it. That could rub some people the wrong way. And then the whole Nick Francona thing, that he basically he was let go, and it was because of Kapler. And Francona, who's Tito's son, and he's a war vet, and he went to get an assessment at home base, which is basically a program that baseball has. I think it's in Boston, or I do think it's in Boston, actually. There's sort of a PTSD issue, and he thinks that they pushed him out because of that. And the Dodgers tried to settle with him and give him $150,000. And he basically said, "No, I'm just going to talk. I'm going to keep talking about this, and I'm not going to be silent over this sort of thing." I'm glad he did that, because that's a big thing. I mean, there's a lot of war vets who are having trouble with PTSD and whatnot, and other issues, mental issues that maybe will never go away. So it's a tough thing. So I'm glad he didn't take the money to just to silence himself. So that's a great thing. And he works for the Mets now in player development. He's a really, really smart kid. think he went to Penn. So he's a really, really smart kid. So that was another thing that kind of came up in the Phillies. They kind of said we knew about it, and it brushed it aside a little bit. So there's all that stuff about Kapler that kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So this could go terrible for Philadelphia, especially where you really couldn't get this hire wrong, in my opinion, because you've got all the young guys who are coming up now, and they are ready. The Reese Hoskins, the J.P. Crawfords, the Scott Kingerys, and the rest of them. You can't get this wrong, especially where next offseason you want to try and pay a Manny Machado or a Bryce Harper, or in a couple seasons a Mike Trout, who's a Philadelphia guy pretty much. So this is a hire that could go terribly wrong. And if it does this year, you cannot be afraid to pull the trigger to fire this guy after 1 year. You cannot do it, because you will ruin the rebuilding process. And I think it'll be interesting to see in the offseason when we do get, Liz Rocha or someone back on to talk about it. Maybe see, her stance or someone else's stance, whoever we get on, as a Philadelphia person, because that's just, from what I've read, it could go terribly wrong.
Yeah, and out of all the hirings, like I said, it surprised me. As a ball player, I respected everything he did. I never pictured him in this role. And out of the hires we've seen, like Mickey Callaway, I think would have been phenomenal for this spot. And you mentioned for the Yankees, Raul Ibanez is perfect as a former Philly. Would have been perfect for this spot. But maybe he didn't want to, like you said, leave L.A. But very interesting. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and see what happens. But I'm definitely hesitant on good results. Let's move on to the hot stove. Yes, the hot stove has already started to heat up. It's not like full flames ahead yet, but it's getting there. Literally like a day after the World Series, the first big bombshell just dropped. Justin Upton he could have opted out of the last 4 years, $88.5 million of his deal. He decides to re-up with the Angels, basically adding on another year and $17.5 million, making it a 5-year, $106 million deal through 2022 with a full no trade clause, which is pretty interesting, giving the Angels, at least for a couple years, a Calhoun, Trout, and Upton outfield. What are your thoughts on this one?
He must have really loved LA, because I do think, he's 30 years old. He just turned 30. He had a resurgent year, 35 homers, 109 RBIs. He even stole 14 bases and got his walks back up to like the 11, 12% that he's had. And, ISO up, average up, OBP up, kind of everything up. I thought he probably could have got 6 or 7 somewhere on the open market, especially with a shallow free agent pool. Maybe he believes in himself and he says, you know what, I'm going to add about $20 million onto this deal, or 17.8, whatever the number was. Get another year, a full no trade. So now my family's not going anywhere. I like the West Coast. I played in San Diego for a year, and I was in Arizona growing up, whatever. And so he says to himself, I want to stay here. And it's good for the Angels, because they lock him down when they don't know about Trout in a couple of years. But at the same time, I think it's interesting that he didn't he's betting on himself to maybe at the 35 to get another 3-year deal, where I think maybe on the open market he might have been able to possibly get a 6 or 7-year deal with the shallow free agent pool this year. But hey, he's still getting paid. He's got a lot of money before this. So hey, good for the Angels, because they do need offense. We know that. It's just Trout, and that's it. Or Anderson Simmons had a good year. But good for the Angels, because they now can protect Trout a little bit. I think it's an interesting and weird move by Justin Upton, in my opinion.
Yeah, great for the Angels. Like you said, very surprising on the Upton side of things. Like you mentioned, not a deep pool of any sorts. You figured you could have got some stuff done. So very interesting in that respect.
Go to the qualifying offers. I think in Bubba, there's 9 of them. I don't think any of them are going to take it, which I think would be a first in a few years now. So just go over it real quick. We get the free Angels: Hosmer, Moustakas, Kane, Jake Arrieta, Wade Davis, Greg Holland, Alex Cobb, Lance Lynn, Carlos Santana. I don't think that any of them will take them. And I think the rules, and I'll just go over before I get your take, the rules have softened, obviously, in the last few years where, the last couple of years before the recent CBA, if you had given a qualifying offer to someone, they may have trouble signing because if your pick was not in the top 10, you would have to give up that first round pick or the next highest, whatever it is. So that was the issue with folks signing, which is why Jeremy Hellickson took his qualifying offer last year for the Phillies and why a couple other people took him as well. But in my opinion, Bob, I don't think anyone's going to take this offer. I think they're all going, and now it's sort of a sandwich pick, but you go ahead and let's hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I would be extremely shocked if anybody accepted these offers here. A couple more things on the rules. Teams had 5 days after the World Series to offer it to the player, and the players now have 10 days to accept or they become a free agent. And under the new agreement also, if you've been offered a qualifying offer 1 year, the following year you cannot be eligible. As in the past, you could pretty much just keep offering them stuff as long as they were, within the rules. So that changes things up for players. It'll be 1 year, $17.4 million. So most of these guys, like the reason why I think we both feel this way is they're going to get more than $17.4 million. Other than that, yeah, the draft picks changing up is a big, big deal. Some guys will get more than others. It all depends on how much money you make and all this other stuff. It'll be fun to see where this lands. We're going to break this down more next week on the players and everything, but there's a lot of good ball players here, and most of them are, late 20s, early 30s. It's not a bunch of old guys for the most part. So these are guys that can go and get 5, 6, 7, heck, 8-year deals in the market we live in today and get paid real nicely. I know, Hosmer could be wearing, Boston Red Sox colors next year, and I know you'd be so excited about that. But well, he's been rumored. He's been rumored. I wasn't going to just blasphemously say something.
Screw John Heyman in that rumor.
But, yeah, I love the new rules, though, because it was so annoying the last few years about all that crap. I'm going to offer it's as bad as the franchise tag in football. Just let these guys make their money. It's ridiculous. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know why they – and, again, I don't know. I just remember it being a sandwich pick, and you didn't lose any pick. I'm not sure why they just can't do that, but I know that, they still do that, but they do take away a pick. So I don't know why just give a sandwich pick depending on how much money the guy gets, and then, if he doesn't get a ton of money, then you give him after the second round or whatever. I know it's a little bit like that now, over $50 million if they read – MLB Daily Dish has a good qualifying offer rules. You search it on Google, you can probably read it. It's a quick read, it won't give you it won't put your mind in a pretzel per se. Yeah, it's interesting to see that nobody will probably take that, because $18 million, not a bad gig right there for 1 year.
No, not at all. Because we've seen guys like you said, Hellickson and stuff in the past. Definitely makes some of those guys pretty darn happy. But like you also said, they won't get those offers now. We saw some options picked up, some options declined, players options, team options, mutual options, the entire thing. We're not talking, for your financials, it's players options. So you got guys like Cueto we talked about all year. Is he going to opt out? Is he not? He's sticking around, Wee and Chen, Matt Wieters, Tanaka. Tanaka surprising to me. Out of those guys, that was the most surprising. Wieters and Chen were no-brainers. But Tanaka staying for 3 more years in the Bronx. What are your thoughts on that?
Something's got to be up with his arm or something that he's worried about failing a physical after he opts out. Yeah, if he opts out of that $67 million and then he fails the physical, now he's lost $67 million. He ain't gonna get paid anything. He'll probably might have to sit out a year. So there might be something. Maybe there's nothing wrong because he did end the year pretty strong. And that's gonna be one thing when we do talk about fantasy a lot. That's gonna be another guy that we kind of focus on and say, who's the real Tanaka here? I'm not sure who he is. We'll focus on some of the velocity stuff and whatnot. But yeah, I think that he's worried and his agent's worried if something is terribly wrong with his arm, then he just gave away $67 million. Cueto, again, I think we both thought that he wasn't going to opt out. And there was that whole rumor that he wanted to finish his career in the AL. Well, clearly there might be something wrong with him too. There was nothing. Again, we broke the whole Chris Sale and Craig Kimbrell, so that was good on you for us. You know, we broke that story. They're going to pick up those options. And I should have broken the Mad Bum too, but that's too bad. Nothing here surprises me. I think the one guy to watch is Andrew McCutchen and what the Pittsburgh Pirates do with him. You know, there's always been rumors of him traded, you know, last year was the Nationals. And maybe someone decides to give a bigger prospect if they're ready to win now and go get him because he had a resurgent year too. You got 1 year left. And then, like I said, nobody really surprised me in terms of the teams who declined. You know, Andre Ethier, obviously, Joey Bats, Don Iwakuma, velocity's down to like 84. Gallardo, not surprising. So nothing is really surprising with any of these, you know, picked up, opted in, whatever. Unfortunately, Derek stuck with Wee and Chen in that contract. That sucks. But, hey, you know, he bought the team for a reason. He's got to figure that stuff out.
Couple questions for you. So the Marlins declined the team option on Ichiro. He wants to play till he's 50. Do you think anybody gives him a shot? Or my thought is maybe he goes back and plays in Japan.
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, you know, he's not, and I didn't get to look, and I can look at his stats real quick here. You know, he's obviously, you know, he never really hit for power. I mean, his 15 homers is tough. And he's still batted 255, and defensively, he wasn't crazy terrible. He only had, you know, 215 plate appearances, but, you know, nothing terrible. I wouldn't be surprised if someone gave him a shot. I mean, it's sort of a marketing thing too, I think. You know, if Ichiro, granted, if maybe not the Red Sox, but if I was a Minnesota Twins team and and Ichiro was on the team, I'd go buy that jersey. So maybe there's something there to that as well. So I wouldn't be surprised, but maybe he could go back to Japan as well. And he's obviously a Hall of Famer no matter what.
Then we had two of the bigger player declined options so far. You had Greg Holland, who declined his $15 million deal. We already mentioned how the Rockies offered him the qualifying offer, and I don't think he's going to take that. He thinks he's going to make a boatload of cash, which is quite entertaining to me, but maybe he will. Closers get paid. But the one that I'm really intrigued about is Beef Wellington Castillo. Last offseason, the D-backs traded him or just released him, I think it was, and Baltimore picked him up on a cheapy deal. And that shocked me that the D-backs got rid of him. I've always been a fan of Wellington's offense. In Arizona, the year before he got let go at 264 with 14 homers, 24 doubles. But this past year was even more impressive. Baltimore, fewer games, about 20 fewer games due to some injuries, but still at 282 with 20 home runs, 11 doubles. To me, 282 from Wellington's not sustainable, but still, bottom line, in a market with, you know, Alex Avila and a few others, he's going to get paid. He's going to get a 3 or 4 year deal. I think that's a sneaky addition to teams, especially in divisions with a lot of left-handed pitching, i.e. the NL West. Just my 2 cents there. Any thoughts on those two guys?
No, definitely. I honestly did not realize he had that good of a season. I really didn't even know it. Probably should pay attention more. But yeah, 20 bombs and only 363 plate appearances is a great thing. And especially for a catcher, I just wonder how much it really will cost. And again, we'll talk about it next week because now he's going to be added along with Greg Holland to the free agency. I'm going to have to research this a little bit more and see how much he actually could get paid.
Yeah, could be pretty sweet.
Let's move on to a contract extension that is a deal that a team like the Brewers has to make to kind of sustain themselves to win as long as possible. And they gave Chase Anderson, after one great year, a contract extension. He got hurt most of the year, but they basically bought a year of his free agency. What do you think about this deal?
It's a phenomenal move. Many people thought when they acquired Chase from the D-backs, I believe it was in the oh, man, why am I blanking? He's now playing shortstop for the Mariners. What the hell? A couple years ago in the trade, they brought
Gene Segura.
Segura. Thank you. I don't know why I was blanking on Gene Segura. But, yes, he was a big prospect at the time, but then he kind of scuffled in his brief stints in the bigs. And people thought he had a really lively arm, and he looked really good this year for the most part, really good, especially in a ballpark like Milwaukee. The weird part is he's going to be 30 years old. People don't realize he's that old already. So this is a smart move for the Brewers because you lock him up for 4 years. By the time he's 34, maybe 35, the contract's over. You don't have to worry about those late years. But you look at Anderson, he had a 2.74 ERA, 8.5 Ks per nine, a ground ball rate of almost 40% in over 141 innings in that ballpark in a division that, doesn't have world beaters, but you have the Cubs. The Cardinals are better than people thought. There's a lot to like with what Chase Anderson put together there. I think it's a great move. Like you said, it's something teams like the Brewers need to do to keep – at worst, Chase is like a 2 or a 3, maybe a 4 in a rotation, and you're still going to get him at a discount from what he's going to make in a couple years from now. I think it's a great move.
Yeah, I like the move too. I mean, his velocity and his fastball was up 2 miles an hour. Maybe about 1, almost 2, just below 2. Swing and strike rate was up from 8.3 to 10.2, so he's definitely missing some more bats. Yeah, he's been definitely a better pitcher. I know there's an article from Paul Sporer. He wrote it probably a week ago, saying that you should show faith in Chase Anderson. So that's something to kind of look out for too. And I owned him in one league, and he was great. And it was kind of a late pick, so that was quality. But yeah, his strikeouts have been up over the last couple of years. I think it was the highest it's been since he was in the Diamondbacks in 2014. So that's good. He got out of that ballpark into another one. I think it's interesting with the ERA. I'm not sure he can be that good with his ERA, having a 3.358 FIP. But, it's something to definitely do some research into. But I like the move as well, and I didn't realize he was 30, like you said.
Yeah, that's the part that surprised me the most. I did not. I thought he was maybe 27, like 30. I know it's only 3 years to the average Joe, but in baseball, pitching-wise, that's big, real big.
Yeah.
Let's talk Shohei Ohtani, a guy I have a feeling we might talk about. We might as well – we had David Price news last year. We might as well have Shohei Ohtani news because I think we might talk about him every week, even after he gets signed. He finally hired an agent from CAA, Creative Artist Agency, which basically locks up that he's coming to America. It was pretty much a done deal, but you never knew. There's always a chance that he might go back for a couple years so he turns 25 and – get the real money he deserves. It's just more proof that this is kind of a sham of a system. I get the system. It makes sense. It just sucks for a guy like Ohtani that's going to get screwed, even though now baseball's trying to allow a special exemption for this to take place. But that's something we can break down when it gets closer to actually happening. But more importantly, what's your thoughts? Ohtani officially will be coming to the bigs.
There was some people who didn't think it was going to happen with the whole agent part of it, and he wasn't going to come over, and then he wasn't going to be happy and whatnot. So that it's when I saw the news, I was very excited. It's another guy to talk about. Not going to spend too much time with him today because, like you said, we'll be talking about free agents next week and where he possibly could go. But it's awesome for baseball fans because this guy can rake and he can pitch. So I don't know. I'm not really sure. And there were a couple guys in the draft, Hunter Green and Brandon McKay, that can do the same thing as young kids. This kid's still pretty young too, not as young as them, but 23 years old. He can do everything. I can't wait to see what happens. You would think if NL teams are smart, they'll go after him. He's mad bum. He's mad bum coming from Japan, and it's kind of awesome to see. Maybe not a lefty per se, but at least in terms of hitting and pitching. So I'm very excited for this kid to come. We'll talk about him in the coming, podcast down the road as we go into the winter. But yeah, I'm very excited for him more.
Yep.
And the last one here in the hot stove, it's unfortunate for this guy, the timing of his Tommy John surgery. Trevor Rosenthal, he got his unconditional release from the Cardinals. Everyone kind of saw it coming. He was about to get an uptick. He made about $6.5 million this year, about to get an uptick in money over the next year. So we weren't really surprised by it. Basically, in my opinion, not really my opinion, but it's just math on his age. He's 27 and a half almost, or he's 27 and a half almost. So you have to think that he'll be almost 29 by the time he comes back. to full health. I don't know. There's not much to say here. What do you think about this one?
The reason why I did want to talk about it was he actually had a really good year this year after having so many hiccups last year. He looked like, I don't think he's ever going to look like he did when he was in his prime, obviously. But he looks really, really good. And he was a big piece of that Cardinals bullpen. And it's a shame, he has the surgery, and instead of, if he's healthy, they tender him a deal, like at least a qualifying offer or something. They let him go. But what I want to see is we saw it happen last year with the Rays. Nate Eovaldi was going through the same thing, and they signed him to a 2-year deal with an option for this year. They just picked up his option for 2018. So they got a young arm coming off TJ. I want to see what team might do this, because even if he's like 80% of the old Rosenthal when he was in his prime, he's a really good 7th or 8th inning reliever, which we've seen go for pretty high stakes. Now, if you can get him right now, he's rehabbing for a discount with the option that, hey, if rehab doesn't go well this year, I don't have to keep you next year, and you can call it good. It's a game changer. It's something we usually never saw in baseball. Now it's actually an option. So that's why I want to bring it up. Maybe it's something that'll happen, and we'll see it come to fruition. But it could be a sneaky move for a team to get a deal in the bullpen.
Yeah, that is definitely something to look out for. And I think the other one, is Michael Pineda as well. I wonder if somebody kind of does that as well. I mean, he's a free agent himself now. He didn't need to be released by the Yankees. So I wonder if someone does that for him too.
Yeah, it's a different philosophy, because no one would ever touch these guys back in the day. But now I think they've seen how well people can, rebound from the surgery. It's an interesting angle. Let's go into some of our season reviews. We're going to do 3 this week to keep up with the times, so we don't do them all year, as Mo puts so gracefully, because, we might be doing them all off season. We're going to kick it off with the Cincinnati Reds, finished 68 and 94. Going to be another, top 5 pick. 10th best farm system in baseball, according to Bleacher Report at the moment. I thought they had a pretty decent season, but you look at their record, and obviously it's not very successful. But you mentioned Hunter Green already, top pick in the draft this past year. They have a lot of things going in the right way. Some of the youth they brought up looked great. A guy that should be perennially considered an MVP candidate, because he's so amazing on such a bad baseball team. What is in store for Joey Votto?
Man, I mean, like you said, he had an unbelievable year. The guy walks almost a 20% clip. I mean, batted .320, 36 homers and 100 RBIs on that team. I know their offense was probably their strength if you had to pick one. But, hey, 34 years old. I mean, he still has six more years and an option year on his deal. So what's next for Joey Votto is probably, unless the Red Sox want to go crazy and go trade for him, he's going to be a Red for life, because that contract is a lot. And I don't think that anyone will trade for it. But he'll be ahead of that rebuild. I would think they would hope to get 3 more years at the most at maybe somewhat Joey Votto-like. Maybe not this year. Maybe he goes down after this. But, hey, the great thing he has is you can't change that eye. I mean, he's still, no matter how old you get, you still know how to carry yourself at the plate and really take pitches and see all the pitches. And I think that's a big thing for him. So I think if it's a tough thing to say with the MVP. I mean, Giancarlo had a great year. He had a great year. Other guys had a great year on winning teams. I think Joey Votto probably, if everyone's smart and they look at everything, then he probably wins it. But yeah, I think it's just what a year for that guy on that team. He played every game too, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't have his page up right now. You do. I think he's played every game, or if not, almost every game, pretty much his whole career. He's literally does not take time off. He's pretty damn impressive.
It was 2011. He probably had some injury, or 2012. He played 111 games. But other than that year, he played 150, 161, 162, 158, 158, 162. He plays every day.
Yeah, he is awesome. And you mentioned your Red Sox. Honestly, I would not rule that out. It all depends, obviously, on how much of the contract and what, do you really want to give up a Chavis or something, which I don't think you do. I wouldn't want to. But then again, this is Joey Votto, who can still do this for a while, even at DH if you had to. Your guy, Dombrowski, I'm pretty sure it's Dombrowski, already came out and said, we don't care about the luxury tax. We don't care about any of that. We're spending money this year. We're building a winner. So I wouldn't completely rule out Joey Votto. It's just on a rebuilding team, there is a lot to be said about the team taking the money, but they need the players also, because if you look at their farm system, they have really good players. Though it's like the Padres, who we'll talk about. Most of them, or at least half of them, are a ways away. And maybe another piece for a little Votto action. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I'd love Joey Votto if he was 31 years old, but when he's going to be 35 years old in that contract, I'm not sure I'd want to do something like that.
Yeah, so that's why it's an interesting predicament. Everybody said Big Papi was done, and you put him at DH, and voila, Votto could easily DH for a long time in that ballpark.
We're not paying $30 million for DH, my friend.
Oh, you never know. I never say never anymore. Let's talk Billy Hamilton. We talk about, must-see pitchers we mentioned already. Billy Hamilton, when healthy, is probably one of the appearances you'll see in baseball, let alone the guy is a gold glove freak in the outfield. Like, made so many plays that you or I or somebody was retweeting on the handle. Fast as fast can be. He had 633 plate appearances this year, the most he's had in his entire career. He hit 247. We know he's never going to be great at that, but his on base is 300. We've always said if you can go 300 plus, there's potential with Billy. He had 59 steals. He's gone 56, 57, 58, and 59 in 4 years now. He even had some pop with 4 homers, 11 triples. This guy's something special. Can he be this guy consistently at the top of the order for the Reds?
No, I don't think so. He set a record in runs. He had 38 RBIs, which is crazy. I just think as you get older, and granted, he just turned 27, so the speed isn't going anywhere. But I just don't think that he can really do it year after year. I don't think they can sustain that. An under 300 OBP. I know in 2016, granted only, with 150 less plate appearances, he went 321 OBP and a 260. So with more at bats, it went down. Now, if it's at 300, maybe for another year or two, but I think they have to figure something out there, because I just don't think that you can have him at the top of the order and really, really have those guys behind you if you can't get on base. It's just not. I mean, it's just Bub, I don't know if you know, but you can't get an RBI if somebody isn't on base. That's a big thing in baseball. So Billy Hamilton, if you're going to put 633 plate appearances and you have an under 300 OBP, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't work.
It's like the old saying, you can't steal first base. So
yes, exactly.
You got to get there. Let's talk about a part of the rebuild. We'll talk about a couple of young guys, and then we'll move on. But Luis Castillo, this kid, he made 14 starts at AA this year. Really good, 2.58 ERA. It's phenomenal. Made 15 starts in the bigs. Sure, he had a 3-7 records, but let's not forget what team he pitched for. He had a 3.12 ERA, absolutely outstanding. Basically 10 strikeouts per 9. He pitched a total of 169.2 innings, basically 170 innings this year. Going forward, as long as nothing structurally is wrong, he had 131 2/3 the prior year, so he's going in the right direction. He should be good for 200 years. This kid, went on. It was kind of shaky early in Cincinnati. The way he finished things up was filthy. Didn't even walk a ton of guys, 32 walks compared to 98 Ks. There's a lot to like about Castillo. This kid, and he's good for any on Castillo.
Yeah, I raved about that. I think you were a little bit wide of the Reds trade, Dan Straley. Well, this is the reason. You take a chance on a couple young guys, and you somehow hit the lottery, and they did the absolute right thing. And I loved that trade for the Reds because they sold high on Dan Straley, and they won. And it was awesome to see this kid. I mean, they shut him down early. I mean, he only had 89 innings in the majors. And I think at Double-A, if I check real quick, so he had 170 innings last year, and they shut him down early. So he's ready to go, 20 to 30 more innings next year. I mean, they're still probably gonna, baby him a little bit. He's gonna be 25 in a month. They're gonna baby him a little bit, but yeah, he was awesome. It's definitely, one guy to watch out for. And we mentioned how much they need pitching help because Homer Bailey's terrible. Feldman, Stevenson, Finnegan, he had his arm issues, so they needed pitching help a lot. And this guy hopefully will be, a frontline pitcher for them for years to come.
Yeah, he's definitely a weapon. Talking about a big draft pick a couple years back, he's been in the minors for 2 years now. Between single A, high A, and double A, two positions last year, hit 321 with 14 homers, 65 ribbies. In 507 plate appearances. I'm talking Nick Senzel, stud third baseman. This guy, people were even saying could have skipped from single A to the bigs this past year. 99% sure he's going to start spring in the system, and just a matter of does he make the team or not. He was their first-round pick out of Tennessee a couple years ago. Man, he's talented. He's only 22 years old. Eugenio Suarez had a huge year at third base, kind of gives them time to move things along. Maybe he starts out in AAA. We see him mid-season, but this kid's a freak. Any thoughts on Senzel?
He could be Chris Bryant in terms of not the player. He could turn into a Chris Bryant, but I think in terms of the Reds will wait a couple weeks, have him at AAA, and then kind of get that extra year and bring him up then. The kid's a stud, and it's funny that when I was looking at his page today, Rotographs actually came out with their first look top 100 prospects, and they based off of different point system, and they have him at 12. And the kid is a stud. I mean, he's like you said, he's 22, so he's not a young kid. They don't have to wait for him like the Blue Jays have to wait for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's ready to go now. And the kid's a 2020 guy, possibly at the ceiling maybe is 30-30. I think he's definitely a 2020 guy for years to come. And the funny thing is when they brought him up to Double-A, he batted 340. He only batted 302 in high A, and he batted 340 in Triple-A. And he's got, he walks a ton. He walks about, 11% of the time, something like that. Strikes out only 18%. So, yeah, he's the kid's a player. I think he'll definitely be up, no later than May 1st next year, in my opinion. I don't think they'll wait till June because he is ready to go. And it's definitely exciting stuff to make that offense even better than it was this year. Okay,
and last thing with the Reds, and then we'll move on. Is the rebuild going in the right direction, and what do you think is coming up for them in 2018?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's going to be Hunter Green's first full season as a pitcher. I think it's Alan Trammell's kid, Taylor Trammell, is down in A-ball, so he'll move up a little bit. So we got to watch out for those two in full seasons. I think the question is, and I think one of the big free agents is Zach Cozart, had a great year and a contract year. Does he get something on the open market from somebody? And if not, how much will the Reds give him to stay? And I think that's key to the rebuild too. I mean, you don't want to tank completely if you have these players stay. Cozart's a pretty good player at shortstop, so I think that's one free agent to watch out for that we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think it's definitely it's definitely going the right way. They definitely need to develop more pitching. That's for sure. I mean that's the big problem with the Reds. So that's something to watch out for in the next draft as they're picking in, the top 5 to 7 picks. In the MLB draft, it's different. You want to draft the best player there, no matter what position he is, but they have to hope that they can really develop pitching and develop it fast.
Yep.
Let's go on to the next one. The New York Mets. I mean, this is what an awful season for them. 70-92. Their farm system is not great right now. It's 27th. I think the first question I have, Bubba, is, can Thor go a full year? He just, Syndergaard just has not been there for them. Do you think he can go a full year, especially with new, and we'll kind of tie these two together with the new manager, Mickey Callaway?
Well, I think Mickey Callaway, like you said, he knows what to do with the pitching staff, or at least eligible in those respects. So that'll help a ton. I think he can. I think they're going to tell him, hey, genius, you don't need more muscle to be a better pitcher. Don't do the lifting program. I think it'd be a great standpoint. And I think the most we have a new medical staff. So that's going to go a long, long ways in this process. I think he can. I think the sky is the limit for him if he's healthy. That obviously they need him to go with DeGrom and company. I think he can be that ace. So I got confidence in Thor this next year.
Is with that, is Mickey the answer at manager? I think we talked about it earlier. I like the hire. I mean, what do you think about that hire?
I like the hire a lot. To say, is he the answer? That's tough to say because there's so many messed up pieces in New York. Like, it's really – I don't think a manager is going to solve all the problems the Mets have. They have problems in the front office. They have problems keeping guys healthy, which I already said should change, hopefully. He'll do a great job of getting the locker room in order. You don't have Matt Harvey being Matt Harvey. Otherwise, he'll be gone. Like, they're not going to put up with that stuff. I think it'll be a good move for a lot of the young players. You got a managerial came up and other stuff. So I think it's a great move, much better than having Terry Collins there. Is he the answer? That's tough because I don't know if there's any one answer for what's taking place in New York.
Michael Conforto with that surgery on his shoulder. It looked good and bad news there. It looked like they fixed the shoulder. It won't dislocate anymore with the procedure that they went through. But he's out 6 months, which means he's probably missing all of spring training, and it's going to take a little while for him to get back. It'll probably be an extended spring training, and you're probably at the earliest looking at like a May 1st return. What can we expect from him? Is this something that we have to wait for because it's a shoulder injury? Is it really not really? Is he punting the first half of the season and then kind of having a second half resurgence?
Yeah, I'm in no mood to rush him back if I'm the Mets. Literally, this kid, we saw how good he can be. When they finally let him play every day in good spots in the order, 27 homers, 68 ribbies, 279 average, slugged 555. Amazing, could just crush it. They need him 100%. There's zero reason to rush him back, but we saw them rush Thor back. We don't know how this injury is going to heal. We've mentioned it when it happened. It's that one like Julio Urias had, Liriano and other pitchers have had it. We know how it affects pitchers. I don't remember. It probably has happened to hitters. I don't remember seeing how it affects them. Probably not as much, obviously. But still, it's going to make a difference in the way you swing a bat when your shoulder's different. So they need to baby step this one along. I'd say all-star break or later and then see what he's got. He might have a big year. I think we're looking forward to more of a 2019 from Conforto.
Yeah, it's a tough one. They did call up a couple youngsters last year, and Ahmed Rosario and Dominic Smith and a couple other guys, but those are really the two big guys. And other than that, based off the Bleacher Report at the end of the season and a couple other places that I'm looking now, I mean, they have a lot of like lower tier guys, thus making them the 27th ranked by Bleacher Report at the end of the minor league season. So they really got to rely on Rosario and Dominic Smith to kind of push the quote-unquote rebuild forward. What do you think of those two? I think we both are in agreement that Rosario could be a stud. I'm not so sure of Dominic Smith. I'd love to hear your opinion on both of them.
I like them both a ton. I think Rosario is a much better player than Dominic Smith. He's the more well-rounded player, one would say, as 2020, maybe even 2030 type upside. But Smith could be good. We saw it last year. What you're going to get from him is like a 240 guy with some serious pop. He might even hit better than that. Technically, he had a better average, I believe, looking it up now, in the minors than people thought. There's a lot to like with those two players, but like you said, there is nothing in the minors right now. Like, there's a few names that pop up from time to time that are having hot streaks, this or that, but as a whole, not good. Yeah, he hit a $198 last year with 9 homers, but in the minors, he hit 330. The year before that, 302, 305, 275, 301. So Smith can hit the baseball. Lots of power, developing as he gets older. Nice pieces there, but like I said earlier, there's a lot that needs to be done in New York, and the minors aren't going to help them at all.
Yeah, and on let's end it on this. On the outline, you kind of put what's up in their next in their massive rebuild. Is that the term we want to use for this? I mean, they have the pitching still employed on the team, and they have some bats that can improve. Is it a massive rebuild like other teams, or do we think that it's possibly like a retool, sign a couple bullpen guys, a couple of maybe cheap bats, and hope that your pitching comes back to 2015 form?
Okay, well, I'll put it this way. It's a massive, we need to figure out what the heck we're going to do with our team.
Yeah.
Because their offense, sure, they had some injuries and stuff, but it was mainly the pitching staff. So, yes, you can bring that back. But still, offensively, like, you're going to rely on Jose Reyes, Drupal Cabrera. You got Rosario and Smith. Conforto's out. But Nemo in the outfield. Lagares. Like, I'm naming guys off that just don't seem appetizing as your main guys. D'Arnaud's a decent catch. These are decent players. But you don't have that guy or those guys offensively, and that's what terrifies me. I've been rooting for teams where you root for a great pitching staff to literally, can our offense score 3 runs? That's what you're praying for. In NL East, you can't afford that. So that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, so I think the Conforto injury really kills any chance of them being relevant in that division, even though the division really isn't great other than the Nationals. So you could really go forward there, but you got to hope that the Phillies and the Braves don't pass you like they have before. But yeah, this Mets team, that's going to be interesting offseason for them. It really is to see who they go and sign, considering some of the guys that they did lose, and Jay Bruce and Curtis Granderson, like you said. But I'm not sure you can go every day with Brandon Nemo in the outfield.
Exactly. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made there. And hopefully they give Mickey the benefit of the doubt. Let's move on to the San Diego Padres. You won last year on that record. Do you feel with this team, that was a successful season?
Yes, and clearly they think it was too, because they love Andy Green. They gave him a multi-year extension. I think you got guys Margot got hurt. He's an old Red Sox guy. I think he had a decent year for his first full year. Will Myers, I mean, he's got the OBP, he walks a lot. The average isn't there, but he's a guy to kind of build around a little bit. Renfroe, he hit 26 bombs in that park, but got to get that average up a little bit and strikes out too much. But I think the reason why it was a successful season is away from the team. I think it's the minor league system. I think, you mentioned it earlier about how, this system really, is a little bit away in terms of some of the guys, but they all took the next step. They drafted Mackenzie Gore with one of their top picks. I think Paul Contro's son, Cal Contro, he's going to be there probably next year at some point. I think Fernando Tatis's son will be there at some point. I don't know what their deal is with drafting, former major league players' kids, but that's what they're doing. I think his kid, they both finished in AA this year. I think they both could be up by the midseason. The issue is, they traded Pomeranz for Anderson Espinoza, and he had Tommy John surgery. So that's another guy that they were hoping for would be ready, if not next year, but the year after. Now he's going to lose, he lost pretty much all this season. He'll probably lose half of next season. And it might be a wash altogether based off when he got hurt. But, Luis Urias took the next step too. He's in AA, so we could see him too. But I think the great thing was they have a lot of top-tier guys. Sure, they might be in lower A, but they don't want to win next year anyway. They want to aim for 2019, 2020, sort of like the Braves and the White Sox and the Phillies. That's when they're really aiming for it. And they have a different, philosophy. I remember a few years back when they went and signed all these guys, they spent all that money. I think they have a little bit of different philosophy. Yeah, they'll spend a little bit of money, but they're not going to be the Phillies, be a top 5 or top 10 payroll in baseball. It's just not going to happen. So I think overall it was a success because, the minor league system really took that next step.
Yeah, you mentioned those young names. You got Mackenzie Gore, you got Quantrill, who I saw pitch in single A. He's filthy. Tatis, Urias, Michael Baez is a beast. Morion's a Cuban, just left-handed monster. You have Josh Naylor, who was in the Arizona Fall League this year hitting bombs. There's a lot to like with this team, a lot to like. But this year we did see, Will Myers, he got the deal in the offseason. had a pretty decent year kind of as the captain of this team, which may surprise many, but this was their guy. Hit 30 homers, hit 243, stole 20 bags. You got guys like Hunter Renfroe, who he's still very, very young, only hit 231, but the power is obviously there. 26 homers. He could, in my opinion, be a 35 to 40 homer guy. Do these guys keep improving? Who do you see being the next young gun to kind of take that step? Because we saw a lot of guys achieve way better than I thought they would this last year.
Yeah, I think Margot, as the leadoff guy, has to take the next step for sure. I mean, he's a possible 2020 guy in terms of what he did this year. I mean, 13 homers. He didn't have a ton of pop with the Red Sox, but I think the way he kind of hit this year, he could get there, and that's his ceiling. But most likely he'll be around what he was at and be around the 10 to 15 homer. But he does need to steal a little bit more. I think he needs to maybe cut down on that strikeout rate. He had, most of his seasons in the minors, he was around, 11, 12%. This year is 20. So he really needs to cut down on that a little bit, maybe get down and split the difference to 16. That's something he needs to do. And he needs to improve on the walk percentage there because he's, as a leadoff guy, got to get on base any way you can. But I think the main guy is Renfroe. I really do. I mean, like you said, he's got 35 to 40 homer power when he wants it. The issue is batting 231. He really was, the last 2 years in AAA, he batted 2015, he moved up, and he batted 259 most of the year in Double-A, and maybe that's what he really is. And then in 2016, the entire year, he batted 306. So maybe he's a 260 guy. He's definitely not a 231 guy. He's got to cut down on the Ks, and he's got to get that average up to around 260, like I said, to make it respectable a little bit. But the power is there, like you said. He's got to take that next step and really be able to sort of protect Will Myers a little bit, because obviously, he doesn't get any pitches anymore, being the only guy able to hit on that team, and his average has really dropped down the last few years. Like you said, 243. It's the lowest it's been since a short season with the Rays in 2014. That was mostly an injury year. 222. So he has the potential a little bit further, but yeah, Renfroe's got to be the guy.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Last question for you. We both agree that their minors are so young. They're making the right moves. They're still a few years away, like you said, with the White Sox and others. What's for them this next year besides Renfroe? Do you think they maybe go sign a guy? Are they waiting to sign guys? What's the next step? Like, do they want to be 500, or are they good with 70, 91 again, or what do you think's going on?
I think in that division, they're probably going to be no better than fourth, and they'll most likely be last with everyone in front of them. I mean, we know, you and I both know, the Giants are not going to be in last again next year. That just won't happen. They won't allow it to happen. And Bumgarner won't get on a dirt bike anymore, probably. They won't allow that to happen either. So we all know that. So we'll both probably have them as fifth. I think the next step is just have that farm system continue to go forward. I mean, I think we all know A.J. Preller, and it's going to be tough for him to make trades down the road. I know he made a couple this year with the Trevor Cahill and Brandon Mara deal with Kansas City. But, with that whole thing with the Red Sox, we could have got some, maybe Espinosa back and given someone else Pomeranz. And the same thing goes with the whole Marlins deal. A lot of guys might not trust him. But I think the last thing that needs to happen is, obviously, Brad Hand, they still have him. That's going to be a big trade chip down the road. And then Denilson Lamet, can he take the next step? He kind of came out of nowhere in the minors last year, and then they brought him up. And the guy can strike people out. We all know that, almost 11 Ks per nine. But can he get that control? Because he had almost 4.25 walks per nine, and the homers 1.42 per nine is high. So he needs to improve those two numbers. But the guy has great stuff. Can he continue to improve and maybe get down to like a high 3, low 4 ERA and bring those numbers down a little bit? If he can take the next step, that will help their pitching staff to wait for those younger guys to come up and move forward with that rebuild process.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Lamet. He had like 3 seasons in one. He was dominant when he first came up, then was just a disaster, and then he was dominant again. So, yeah, if he can take that step, could be really, really nice moving forward. But interesting stuff to keep an eye on with San Diego, indeed. Well, that'll wrap us up for episode 37. Recap some manager stuff, some hot stove action, some teams. It's going to be a wild offseason. You can already tell. Any final thoughts, Mo?
No, yeah. I mean, we're into the hot stove. You know, I was able to work from home yesterday and watch Hot Stove on LB Network, so that's kind of good to have them back. I mean, I miss LB Central a little bit, but we're into the hot stove. Winter meetings are, around the corner. So there'll be a lot of things going on. I think we'll have our free agency episode probably next week. So I'm excited to talk about that as well.
Yep, free agency bonanza. So we'll get that in. But again, you can check Mo out on Twitter at Boston_Mo. I am at BDintric, and the podcast at Around Bases Pod. If you guys have any random baseball topics you want covered in the offseason, let us know, because if that's a slow off-season week, we're going to need a filler somewhere. So hit us up with any ideas you have, because unless you just want me blabbering about nothing, you might want to throw them out there.
I can go Red Sox, man. You know that.
I don't want me and you to go Red Sox Giants for an hour, because that'll really get things going. So, again, everybody, thanks for listening. Around the Bases, episode 37 in the books. We'll catch you guys next week.
See ya.